I'm Charlie Bride of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Wyatt Russell, who plays Dan Lafferty on the FX limited series Under the Banner of Heaven. First thing I wanted to ask is, did you have any understanding of the LDS Church or fundamentalist LDS or the practice of polygamy prior to taking on this role?
I didn't really. The only experience that I'd had was driving through Colorado City and driving through St. George and Utah a lot, going on that route between Colorado and Los Angeles. So I'd been through that area. And one of the things that I always thought was, it was just very interesting. It was eerie, and you don't want to bang on anybody's experience too much when you don't truly know it. So it was always just a sort of a novelty interest of mine, watching these families of kids go and mine for gems. They were in total FLDS garb, because when you drive through that area, it's like totally modern day, everything. All the people that go to Zion, they want to go on a canyoneering trip, they go through Colorado City to get to the head of the trailhead. And you see the compounds, with cameras and barbed wire and 12-foot high walls. And it was always just so eerie, and couldn't help but being interested by it. That was years ago. And so when this opportunity came up to be able to be a part of the show, having that little bit of experience, I thought, was an interesting context to have had in real life. Not that it brought me much understanding of anything, but just those questions had been swirling in my head a little bit because it was just too odd to ignore. But prior to that, the only any religious experience I'd ever had, I grew up going to a Jesuit school. And so my relationship to all religion was very academic. It wasn't, I didn't go to church, I didn't go to mass. But I had a relationship to it through academia.
So, it's interesting you mentioned that driving through Colorado City, Arizona, which I remember first hearing about that city on the news when the whole thing with Warren Jeffs, the prophet of the FLDS, was put on the most wanted list. Was that like right around that time that you were making those drives through there?
It was right. I was right afterwards, because what had happened was his bodyguard bought the compound that they were building for him when he was in prison. He manipulated everybody to think that he was going to, Heavenly Father was going to escape from prison, and he was going to go back and live in this palace. And his bodyguard bought it and turned it into a bed and breakfast called Zion's Most Wanted that you can literally go stay at right now, which weirdly was kind of cool, because it sort of undermines the whole thing in a way, which in any situation I always thought was a funny thing. And I've kind of got a sixth sense of humor, and it when you can't help but drive through, you see all these compounds with 12-foot high walls, and they've got barbed wire on the top of the fences and cameras. And then you've got this hotel that was Warren Jeffs' house. That's now a hotel called Zion's Most Wanted. You can go stay in it. So weirdly, it provides this like place as a novelty and oddity for people to go stay at. And it kind of juxtaposes the whole city in a weird way that I find amusing. I'm sure some people there don't, but you can't help but think that it's amusing. So that was really my only experience with it. I think it was like right after, maybe a few years after he had been, he had passed away or died or whatever.
So, it's very easy, and I would say accurate, to classify someone like Dan Lafferty as a monster. But, when you're giving a performance, you want to make that a more well-rounded character. And I was wondering, what sort of steps did you take to make Dan more of a three-dimensional character rather than someone who's just a monster?
Yeah, I mean, I always think it's important for those characters when they really are, internally monster-esque, and they have that in them deep-seated, that you see the humanity in them, because that's what you will see in real life. You won't see very often like those devil horns growing out of someone's head. It's all hidden, and it's hidden by manipulation, and it's hidden by love. And that was one of the things that we really focused on. Was he loved his family. He loved his family so much that he was so afraid of being excommunicated. Any questions he ever had about what life might be like on the outside world weren't even considered, because that meant that you would never talk to your family again. For someone who loves their family, that's not a door you can walk out of. The only door you can really go through is the one beneath your feet. So you go down that rabbit hole to try and find freedom. And I think that Dan found freedom down there, and he felt like, oh, here I can do whatever I want. I can play within the guidelines and the rules. The rules are actually, infinite if you really think of it that way. And he justified all of his horrible actions and all the things that he ended up doing, murdering people, because that was freedom to him. And even now he's in prison and he views it as his monastery. And it's, how do you get through to a person like that? You can't. They're so set in their ways, because it's all based off of love. He feels that he's doing it for the right reasons. And that's what makes it scary. It's not scary because he shows you it's scary. It's scary because you don't see it until the very end, kind of, if you're the person that's on the receiving end of it. He's a great manipulator and a fantastic narcissist. Two qualities that a lot of, very, very evil people with a lot of power end up wielding in ways that can harm a lot of people.
You'll have to forgive me. As I said, I live outside of Washington, D.C., so I have no idea what narcissism looks like. Sort of going along with that, how do you go about getting into the headspace of someone who was not only real, but also, as you mentioned, proudly committed these heinous acts?
It was sometimes easy and sometimes hard, because you'd hear him in some of I had a lot of audio recordings. They weren't interview settings. So sometimes you can't trust somebody in an interview. You just don't know if what they're telling you is the truth, or if what they're telling you is something they want you to know. And so I heard these audio recordings of just him and I guess a friend of his, or someone that had befriended him, or was an acquaintance. I'm not sure who it was, but he was speaking candidly, and everything was just very pleasant and very nice. There was no vitriol. There was no hate. It was all finding love. It was all doing things out of love, being empathetic towards baby ducks outside he'd always liked to look at. And, it was like not the person that you would have thought would have done these crimes. So getting in the head of that person sometimes feels really, really horrible in one way, because you don't know how to reconcile the fact that you have to be a nice person playing the character, knowing the result of it. And you can't, obviously, as the actor, play the result of what happened. You have to play the reality of the moment that it's happening in. And at times you'd get done with it and go, God, I just played this guy like he was just the nicest guy in the world. And he just did these terrible things. It feels so horrible, but that's what makes it scary. And that's what makes it real. And so you had to be able to sort of bifurcate those things in your mind and play him really as you thought he was, and as much information as I could gather through Lance, through recordings, through YouTube videos, you feel that justification in those moments so that you could deliver it with conviction.
Your two, I think the two main scene partners that you had throughout this limited series were Sam Worthington and Chloe Pyre, and they were incredible scene partners for you to have. What were they like as for you to work with for so much of the series?
They were so great. Sam was so into it. He was so he cared so much, He was able to play and do things differently, and every time he'd do something differently, it provided you a chance to do something differently within the guidelines of what we were doing. Obviously, he was very easy to work with, and I had a wonderful time with him. He was just a great person to be around on set. He has kids, and we would talk about our kids a lot. And it made it a very nice experience with Sam. And Chloe, like I said before, she's just a gem. She's just, when you get to work with someone like that who's playing your significant other, there's an intimacy there that you have to manufacture, and sometimes that's difficult. You don't get a lot of time, and we did with Chloe and Andrew and Daisy and Seth and all of us. We'd hang out a lot and got to know each other off set. That really helped going to do what we needed to do when we were filming. And Chloe she just gives you everything and more that you couldn't have thought you would have wanted to ask for. She's just a genius actress. And there's a lot of times where you catch yourself watching someone like that. And it's a good thing, because that, I'm watching somebody be this character and going, fuck, you're good. It's so good. And so I felt very lucky, very fortunate to have those people as my main scene partners. I mean, very fortunate.
So, what were the most difficult scenes to shoot for the series, be it logistically or for you emotionally? What were the most difficult ones to shoot?
The two ones that were most difficult to shoot were in the last episode, just the murder scene, just because it makes you feel sick, and there's a logistical aspect to how you're gonna abuse a woman. It's a horrible thing to have to logistically go through. You have to plan it out and think it's horrible. It just makes you feel sick the whole day. And that was really hard. It was honestly not saved. It was put into perspective to me by how good Daisy was, how unbelievable she was in that moment. It made it doing it actually much easier, just because she's so good. But it just made you feel horrible. It was just it didn't feel good. You had to really wash that one off. It took a little bit longer to wash that day off than other days. And then the other one that was really hard, just because of the subject matter again, was in episode 5, when I'm telling Matilda, when Dan's telling Matilda that he's going to marry their daughter. And it's just an awful feeling. It doesn't matter that they're words that you didn't write or don't feel or don't say. You still have to say them with conviction. And so that all day over and over, it just makes you, it doesn't feel good. You just feel awful and you feel sick and gross. But you got to deliver it and do it the way that he would have done it. So that was important. And we got through it, but those were hard.
And just segueing to something a little bit different, you got, last year you got to step into quite an iconic role when you played Captain America on Falcon and the Winter Soldier. What's it like to step into a role like that?
It was it was really interesting because the first, when they said, here's who you're playing, I really did with Zoe and Kari. We were in a meeting and I just said, I just don't think that I'm going to be your guy. I think you're going to be really unhappy with me. I just don't think I'm your guy. And then they kind of went through the character and the arc of what they would like the character to be. And I really saw what they were doing and said, oh, okay, so it's not Captain America. That Captain America is a very difficult role to play. Because it's your set of boundaries. You're limited by a moral compass that's always pointing north. It's just really hard, and it's a lot easier honestly to play characters that have flaws for me, because there's a lot to grab onto. So when we were able to dig into that character and really analyze what a person like this would be like and why he would be doing the things he would be doing, it was such a great experience collaborating with them, because they really took the feelings that I had about a character like that, one that hadn't been done before in the MCU. That was a nice thing to come on and be able to do, to create your own version of a character. You're not having to step into somebody else's role and be that person. You were charged with being a different version of a person who wears the same suit for 5 episodes, and transition to somebody else. And so that getting that transition and arcing that transition in a MCU, it's like, it's crazy and it's big and there's fighting and it's nuts. It's just like it's a cornucopia of stuff that just of senses, to try and get, an element of a reality of a person's arc to go from point A to point B was a fun challenge. And it was something that, again, I hope we get to do it again. I have to start working out like now if I want to do it in 3 years, but Dan didn't look like Captain America. So I had to I'll have to, do things differently again. But it was, look, when Marvel asks you to do something and you get to carry that shield for 6 seconds, it's an honor. And, I did the best that I could.
Well, Wyatt, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best over the season. And to all of our viewers, please like this video, smash that subscribe button, and don't forget to go to goldderby.com and use the Gold Derby app to make your Emmy predictions. Thanks so much, Wyatt.
Thanks a lot. Good to see you.